One you knew you would see the biggest gift would be from me, and the card attached would say, thank you for being a friend.
Yes.
We are the Golden Girls. Oh wait,
something
the Golden
like
Years.
that.
No, that was a different book.
Okay, let's stop it now because it is time for the podcast. Okay, so hello everyone, welcome to it. This is it. Okay, I've got that out of my system. I truly have.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Out of my system. Yes, folks, it's a spoiler room, and tonight we are covering 2017 It, and I've got a great spoiler room crew with me tonight to talk about this film that is a little bit polarizing in the horror communities and among the horror fans. And I got a great group here. First off, the diva of the spoiler room is here. It is Dawn. Hello, Dawn. How are you tonight?
I am just fine. Thank you, Mark. How are you?
So glad you could join us. I am doing well, or hanging in there anyway, for reasons and such, but I am doing well. Thank you for joining us. And next to Dawn, he's back in the spoiler room as well. It is Mr. David from Inside Movies Galore. Hello, David. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Yourself?
We're hanging in there. So looking forward to talking about some crazy clowns. So
that's if you can float.
If you can float. Oh, it floats. And then they have to drain the pool and clean it. But anyway, then next to David, the bow tie man himself is once again in the spoiler room. It is Mr. Paul Salzer. Hello, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing well. My navel is still here.
Well, that's good to know. Good to know.
It went missing for a couple days. It was very, very frightening.
One must always keep track of their navel because, you know, it could go out to sea and never return. Oh, no, sorry, wrong navel. Anyway, tonight, yes, folks, it is 2017's It, brought to us by Andy Muschietti? Muschietti? How would you pronounce that? I murder names. So
I think the first time that you tried to murder it, did you hear that? I said it. Anyway. Anyways, but I think the first time you said machete,
which is an appropriate name for a horror film director, Andy Muschietti. Well, Muschietti, however you want to pronounce it. He directed this film. He was the director of Mama, which was surprisingly good up until like the last few minutes of the film, in my opinion. And here he is giving us the big screen. The first time big screen, yes, folks. The other one was a miniseries. The first time big screen version of Stephen King's It. And Dawn, did you want to give the summary tonight, or you want to hand it to someone else?
You know, I'd rather hand it to somebody else because I'll start talking about the second half of the movie, or the second half of the story, which is not part of this movie.
Okay, sounds good. Paul, how you want to give it a whirl? You're pretty good at this.
Oh, yeah, I was not prepared, but basically it's about a bunch of kids who discover that a shape-shifting entity, multi-dimensional being that has taken the form of a particular Pennywise the dancing clown comes to Derry every 27 years. And what happens is that it essentially kidnaps all these kids and drains them of their life force. And so, of course, the Losers Club, in a typical Stephen King fashion, basically have to encounter it and in the process discover a little bit about themselves and about their own fears.
Yeah, that's a good summary. I like that quite a bit. And this film opens. Well, first off, what got me with this film was that it was rated R.
Yeah.
And people may go, what? But I mean, in today's horror trend, it is more rare to find a rated R horror film getting wide release. So what was funny, though, is I didn't realize this film was actually rated R until I sat down and watched the opening credits. We get the opening scene in It, and it kind of sets the stage bit of what you're in for here. We get Georgie and his brother Bill. Is it correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And Bill is ill, and you've seen this in the trailer, folks. He makes this floating boat so that, because it's a small town, not a lot to do. So he gives it to his brother Georgie, who decides to take it floating down the rivers of water in the street that are in the drainages. But it gets sucked into a storm drain. And just when you think the boat is lost forever, we are introduced almost within 10 minutes of the film to Pennywise the Clown. Now, you may have heard many people talk about Pennywise the Clown and Tim Curry's infamous portrayal of this. In fact, I think that's the only thing people actually remember from the miniseries. So let's talk about this opening scene and where they really let you know, oh, hey, this is truly rated R. Dawn, what'd you think about the opening first bit of this film?
I thought I was impressed. I was truly impressed. Bill Skarsgård did fantastic. He made Pennywise his own while keeping that dark, gleefully wicked, menacing tone. He didn't, I mean, the makeup and all that was closer to what was in the book than Tim Curry's. Okay. And Tim Curry was fantastic. I mean, Tim Curry is perfect.
Yes, he is.
But yeah, there's you can't compare. Well, you could try to compare them, but Skarsgård did a fantastic job.
Yeah, we get to see him, and the voice he picked and everything. Now, I'm not familiar with the book. I've read a few Stephen King books as people follow along. I'm not a huge reader anymore. Was when I was a kid. Never was able to pick up it, so I wasn't quite sure the portrayal or the overall portrayal of Pennywise being more accurate than the book. But Dawn, you said it's a little bit closer.
The design of the costume is a lot closer. It's almost dead on for what's just as described in the book.
Oh, nice. Well, there's a positive there alone that they are actually trying to hit closer to the source material rather than making this more of a remake of the TV series, which a lot of people thought it maybe was. David, what'd you think of this opening scene and where you pretty much get the idea, oh yeah, we're rated R here with the Pennywise and how he gets a bit hungry with Georgie?
Well, I tend to agree with the opening credits. Seeing a rated R release film that is put to a wider audience, I tend to think, oh, okay, I'm not used to this. Is this happening? Because I'm used to just going to the local video store for a rated R film. It's kind of like it's not that often you get to see that many rated R films in the theater. But anyways, as far as the brother Billy, I felt like the kid in the original the original miniseries did it a hell of a lot better. I'm sorry, for some reason that lisp was just not coming to me.
Oh, you mean the stutter in the
stutter
movie versus?
Yeah. I mean, it felt kind of faked to me. Okay, the boat as it was sailing down the thing. If you notice in the original miniseries, there are actually ripples as it's going through the stream. If you notice in this version, there is not one ripple, and it's going through water like it's walking on water.
Well, it was covered in wax too. So.
No, it wasn't covered in anything while it was going down the stream. There was nothing that that it seemed like it was sailing. No, what is it? No circles around to show that it was going through the water. You just I don't know. Now I actually thought that the teeth. Now
Mhm.
that I wish that had actually been on the original Stephen King miniseries. I wish that those Leviathan teeth had been on that clown. Other than that, the only things that I heard coming out of Bill Skarsgård's voice was "We all float down here," and I thought that his voice was annoying.
Wow. Okay. Paul, how about you?
The scene was very disarming for me.
Disarming. Wow.
Yeah.
We just are full of puns tonight. Yes, folks, in case you haven't seen it, and it is the spoiler room. Old Georgie, he gets he becomes a lefty.
Yeah, he does.
He becomes a lefty because that's the only arm he has left because Pennywise got a little hungry and bites off the other one.
As you would if you were a clown and a being that lives off the life force and fears of people, especially children.
Yes.
And speaking of which, I enjoyed Mr. Skarsgård's performance. I thought it was a lot creepier, and I felt chilled by his performance. Whereas Tim Curry did a wonderful performance, I did not feel creeped out by his Pennywise. Bill's Pennywise truly kind of, there was something about him. There was something about how his eyes were, and he was able to draw you in. And then just like something that's supposed to scare you, you get drawn in, fascinated, and then suddenly it changes and he jumps out at you. And that was really, it was disarming. Just, I know I joked about it, but it was very disarming because his performance kind of made you feel like he was a performing clown, that he truly was center stage. He wasn't really hiding in the shadows, even though that's where he is. So it just felt like he was this amazing clown, and that's what he does, is he draws people in with his like really huge charisma, and then he just gets you. And that's what I liked about it, and that's why I think the first scene was a wonderful scene to start out this film with.
I thought so too. I mean, it gets you in. The thing, what surprised me in it is that here we have a wide release film, and first it's a wide release horror film that's rated R, involving children. So, for me, just starting out, I'm like, okay. And so then you have a kid get his arm brutally bit off, and it's shown before he gets dragged into the storm drain by Pennywise. I'm like, okay, this film has caught my attention. I suddenly have a bit more mad respect for the filmmakers, because whether or not you like it or not, you've got to admit, you've got a rated R horror film with a very brutal thing happening to a child on screen that nearly never happens in wide release horror films.
And what's scarier to a parent than seeing a child get hurt?
Well, here's the thing too, and I've caught it now at the beginning here, because it was brought up, and it's a theory I want to go into here. And Dawn, I think you brought it up in your review on intheaudience.net, that we get the first evidence, and I didn't catch it at first, of the adults not seeing things.
Yeah, absolutely. The adults, however it works, it feeds on the horrors and fears of children, because children have a more vivid imagination. Adults cannot see it, do not sense it, do not see the effects or the psychic projections it has. It does not exist for adults at all.
So that adds another level, I think, a bit of tension, at least to this opening scene, because you get an old lady on the porch who totally misses the fact that there's a blood streak in her street in front of her, in front of her house, where a little boy was just playing. You don't even think she might have even seen Georgie at all, or the other theory that I had, because we're going to jump around tonight, folks. Well, we could run through the whole movie, but the movie was rather long. But this theme I definitely wanted to explore because Dawn made such a great point in her review on it. And I want to get Paul's and David's opinion on it and more of her thoughts, is the fact that I was trying to figure out, do the adults not see everything, or are some things they're just ignoring because they know, some of them know about Pennywise? I don't know, Paul, what do you think about that? I mean, some of the things we know because they established later on with the blood room that the adults don't see the stuff from it, but
well, okay, so since we are jumping around, there is an actual scene in the film, and if you read the story, you know a little bit more about it, is when Beverly basically says she's starting to forget all the things that's been happening, and that's just a sign of the power that it has, and that as you get older, you are forgetting, and that people do forget it. It's like, even if they've seen it, they immediately forget it. So the older you are, the more likely you're going to forget the scenes. There's also a scene, I think, where there was an old lady that was, I think there was an old lady that was driving down a car, and she sees the bullies kind of hitting on the Losers Club guys, and she totally ignores that. And that, you could tell that she saw it, but I think then it just kind of exits her mind. Like, all violence kind of leaves at that moment. And I think it's just part of that curse. It's that 27-year curse.
And further than that, as that car drives by, the red balloon is in the back seat. So it's a visual signifier that, yes, it is, people look past it.
Mm-hmm.
So you think that, the scene we're talking about in particular, folks, is there's a scene where we have the Losers Club, your basic group. If you've ever read anything Stephen King, your basic group of outsiders. You've got the hero with a flaw who's has feelings for the token girl who's in the group. You have your nerd, you've got your your religious kid. I mean, you've got all your kind of stereotypical kids in here. Well, you have a new kid named Ben, I believe, and he gets cornered by some very vicious bullies in this town. And they're carving an H, the leader of the group, Henry, I believe his name was, right?
Henry,
yep.
Was carving his name into, and literally carving his name into the belly of this kid, and the adults, they see it, and it gets forgotten. And as Don mentioned, the red balloons in the back seat. So you wonder, is David a tool right away of Pennywise, or is Pennywise just letting David do his thing? I mean, Henry do his thing. Sorry, David. What do you think? Do you think that Pennywise is letting Henry do his thing to instill the fear? At least this part of the movie where he's carving the H?
I think that Pennywise is ultimately definitely using Henry as a tool for fear, at least in the beginning. I mean, in the beginning, it was kind of like your regular bully against the lesser, weaker child who's been hit or hit, abused, whatever, while he was at school or outside of school or wherever the situations ended up happening. And I believe when he actually did the carving of the letter, I think in a way he did become possessed.
Mm-hmm.
Like something came over him at the time, and there was more blood drawn, I think, than was necessarily needed. And even his cohorts, his droogies, who were right beside him, were looking at him like, aren't you going a little bit too far here?
Yeah, right.
But there's definitely a sense that the parents are unaware of the evil that is happening, the things that are going on in these children's lives. And Unfortunately, you don't get to see a lot more than the children that are part of the Losers Club in order to see how the interactions of the others around them in their school, or in their everyday lives as they're walking down the street. You don't really see too many more people than just that guy who went missing, who was part of the other side of the bullies, so.
Yeah, you do have that, and yes, we'll get to the parents in a minute, but Henry does seem to be heightened. I mean, he's already the town bully. This town is screwed up, folks. Derry is just screwed up from corner to corner, whether or not it's the curse or not. But this place has all kinds of things: asshole parents and vicious bullies who seem to be amped up. Dawn, would you say that Pennywise has kind of amped him up? Or at least in the beginning part here, before he truly takes him over? Or do you think he just lets him run?
No, I think that Henry and his little gang, I think that Henry and his little gang of monsters there, his little bullies, that's just how bad of bullies they are. I mean... So that scene in particular, and several other scenes with Henry and those bullies, flashed back to so much. It horrified me, because that type of bullying happens.
Yes,
it has been happening. It is happening now in our schools, and yes, to the point of people physically shooting each other, cutting each other. It is happening now. I don't think it's a Pennywise thing. I think that's when Pennywise took notice of him, but I don't think he had any influence at that point.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to really have influence until that part where the Losers Club finally realized that they might actually have a way to fight back. And that's when he seems to actually take over here. He's like, oh, crap, I got to pull my ace card out, my psycho card.
Pennywise definitely gets in everybody's brain at some point, all the children's brain at some point.
Yes.
But I think he was that scene you're talking about with Henry, the other boy, gosh, I forget his name, the kid that liked to play with fire. He's the first one that Pennywise reached out to.
Patrick.
I didn't find anything interesting except for a meal.
Right. Patrick was, because... Yes. Well, because he shows the zombies to him, and the kid actually gets afraid, and he's like, oh, this kid's just a dud. We'll just eat him. Paul, how about you with this scene? Do you think, would you agree with Dawn that Pennywise is just noticing Henry but let him run wild and didn't really need to do anything for a while? Or do you think that he was more in control of Henry from the start?
No, I think I agree with Dawn, only because Pennywise really does feed on the fear and that energy that it causes. And since Henry he's a causer of fear rather than being fearful. It would be like the equivalent of eating a celery stalk, and Pennywise would just look at him and like, okay, you're a vegetable, get out of my way, give me something meaty. And that's what I think he did, is he just kind of like, you're a little light snack. Maybe we'll find something else with you. And then, like Dawn said, when Pennywise suddenly realized that the Losers Club was able to mount some type of defense, it was like, well, I need somebody that's not in that can be influenced by that kind of defense. And so it's like, okay, let's get Henry involved, and you'll be sort of my helper. You'll be my like Renfield type of character.
Yeah, he was. And Henry was played by what was the actor's name? I want to make sure I get it right here, because I thought his performance, Nicholas Hamilton, I thought his performance was just downright. I mean, I was an adult and I was scared. I thought his performance as Henry was great and very convincing. And yeah, it is sad, but there are actual bullies that do that exact thing. And I mean, Ben, he's a great character. You know, he's the new kid, and he's kind of used to this, but not getting his belly carved, but getting picked on because he's a new kid. But he's not the only one that gets picked on. Beverly is the female member of the Losers Club, but we see right from the beginning she even gets bullied. I mean, this town is just full of screwed up people. She gets bullied because of rumors that spread about her. And yeah, Dawn, what did you think of the Beverly character and how her story played out and her?
She overcame a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, she really did. She had the rumors that were spread about her, that she was a whore that slept with everybody, were even more horrific when you found out what her father was doing to her.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about screwing up a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that she actually, you could see her from the beginning and going through things through the development of her friendship with the boys, that she was actually getting stronger.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire film, even with what Pennywise ended up doing, by kidnapping her and trying to feed on her, she's definitely the strongest character in so far in this movie.
Now, is that accurate to the book as well? Was she a stronger character in the book, or
she was always the character that everyone kind of used to get? I mean, she was the glue kind of that held them together.
Mm-hmm.
There is a scene in the book that didn't make into the movie, thank goodness, that really does bind them together in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll have to read this. You read the story and you'll know which scene I'm referring to. But she is the character. She's that strong character that binds the Losers Club together. So yeah, I think that they kept true to her character in that aspect.
David, how about you with Beverly's character?
I thought Beverly's character was phenomenal in the film. I thought that see, whereas I didn't like, whereas I have said that I didn't like, Bill Skarsgård's character. I think that that all the children in here played all of their parts spot on. Beverly, she's like the crux of the group. She's the person who is the center. Everyone looks up to her, and yet everyone has a crush on her. It's kind of like that love-hate relationship that they have. But like Dawn said, she did have to overcome a lot, and I believe that they touched on a little bit more on what happened behind the scenes with her father in this film than they did in the previous miniseries. Mm-hmm. I think because of the visuals that were going on there, and there were a lot of visuals. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and that part is what impressed me with the film. I know a lot of people hated it, but what impressed me with the film is here you have a wide release film that goes dark places very quickly with kids, and especially with her character. I was very surprised of how much they conveyed without actually showing more, but they conveyed so much. You just got so much heebie-jeebies. Mm-hmm. So much.
Yeah, if you missed it, you were trying to miss it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You were ignoring it if you did not miss exactly what they were implying and inferring with it.
That's the part of the film that actually creeped me out the most. It wasn't the shaking of the clown. It wasn't the creepy voice of the clown. It was the stuff behind with the children that was happening to me, and that's what sort of gave me a creep factor.
Well, in general, I mean, this film. I apologize to everyone because I am not knowledgeable in the book, but we have wonderful crew members here who are. But for me, the feeling I almost get from this book, from this movie, is that the real life horrors are far worse than anything Pennywise could do to these kids.
Yes.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yes, and that's why he chooses these particular kids to feed on, and that's why these particular kids are equipped to fight him.
because they've been dealing with this all their lives,
Mm-hmm.
basically. Yeah, I mean, because that's what I got. Because you're watching this, going, "Holy crap!" You know, Pennywise is a cinch compared to her dad or the mom who was that
Munchausen by proxy.
yeah, Stanley, was it that no,
No, Stanley's father was the rabbi.
that's right. Stanley was the one that had the pressure from his dad to be perfect from him. Who
It
was
was
it?
Eddie.
Eddie. That's right. Eddie, who had the mom who was saying he was constantly ill and had this kid afraid
Of everything.
of germs. You know, the mom here, I think, had him more scared than Pennywise. David, would you say that with Eddie and his hypochondriac mom and the other creep factor with her? Is there something implied there as well?
I think so too, because there is a not well talked about, subject where how much protection should you give your child?
Yeah.
I mean, to the extent of fear, making them afraid to go out the door, to step out and do things in their own life, to medicate them in order to make them feel like they will never be able to leave their side. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, and I mean he was scared of all of that more so than the climbing the clown's scary, but he's scared of lepers and dropping his pills. Don, what'd you think of this? Did you think this was not nearly? I'll say not nearly on one level as what happens to Beverly, but there's still a big creep factor with Eddie's mom in this situation he's in, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, Munchausen by proxy.
Mhm.
It's horrible because, pardon me, in the scene in the pharmacy, where after he's broken his arm and he's got the cast, the girl at the pharmacy says, these are all placebos.
Yeah.
Which means that, she's the mother's making up these illnesses that he does not have to make him more reliant on her, to make other people feel sorry for her for having such a weakly child, whatever psychological need it is fulfilling. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Do you think it would have been different had its father not died? I mean, do you think that she's doing it because she lost her husband and companion, and so the child is the only thing that she has of him, and so is overly bearing because of that?
Hard to say. We don't really know how he died.
Yeah, cancer, I thought. But I'm probably getting it from the source material. So.
You might be getting that from
the book. It's been a while since I've read it.
I think it's from the source. So
yeah, in the movie,
ignore that.
No, it's okay. No, it's fine. In the movie, they don't mention why his dad died, but you do get an idea of her cabinets full of pills.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my goodness,
full of pills. Which again and that's what I loved, is this film captured as much as the creepy stuff that Pennywise does. You learn the additional creepy stuff these kids are facing in real life, and then we even get it with our boy, our hero, quote unquote. I use it in quotes because they're all pretty much heroes here. With Billy, that his dad, after Georgie goes disappearing, because it's been like a year when we catch up after Georgie goes disappearing. Now we catch up with everybody a year later. The parents there are even, they really look at, but you almost get the impression that they blame him, don't you, Paul?
I think so. Well, not for the actual incident, but for keep dragging it out, because I think it's part of that curse where they have this emptiness that they can feel, but then when the curse takes over, they can forget about it. But because Bill keeps bringing it back up, it's like they're suddenly snapped back into that, and then they feel that loss all over again. And so that's I think what they really hate about him, and for doing that, because when they can just have that oblivious, not knowing, it's so happiness for them, because they don't want to live through that, and poor Bill just keeps dragging them through it every time. At least that's the feeling I got from it.
Yeah, I mean, out of parents though, I think the people that the two kids that have it the worst, I think, are Ed's and Beverly for sure.
Yeah,
I think those two are the extremes. But you also get them in various forms. As we mentioned, Stan is going for his bar mitzvah, and his dad is like, "You haven't been studying. How does it look for the rabbi?" I mean, every parent almost. It's like, how does that look to me? Dawn, is this somewhat like the book as well, where they're portraying this pretty much from the kid's perspective?
Oh, absolutely. It is absolutely, all of it is from the kid's perspective. That's something you keep mentioning, but child peril, it's a big deal. And that's a large part of what makes this so horrific.
Yeah, and it does, because you people try not to. They try to avoid the subject whenever possible. And here you're on a wide, big screen, and all of these subjects are being presented right in front of your face, mixed in with some really crazy visuals. I want to get to the horror scenes and how Pennywise torments each of these kids, because David, did you get a feel like this was a bit of old school, almost Nightmare on Elm Street-ish, in that they hit you from the start, and there's really not a lot of space between creepy events, is there?
In a sense, yeah. I thought that I was getting like a kind of an 80s vibe, that sense of slasher moment.
Yeah. Well, and the stuff that happens too reminds me of old school 80s horror, like Nightmare on Elm Street and its knockoffs and such, where you just have the weirdest visuals.
Yeah.
But yet they're also creepy. At one point you're like, well, I don't know if I should laugh or really be scared as hell about this. And right now I think that I'm a little more scared that I am laughing at this, because even the crooked lady's face, I mean, they managed to make that creepy. Paul, what about you and these scenes we get with the kids and their nightmares?
Like you said, it gives you this feeling of dread, which I think lasts longer when I leave the theater. I can keep feeling dread. If it's a scare, I'm startled and I'm all excited and my heart's pumping, and I do like that scare moment, but it's dread and creepiness that I take with me back home. And so they were very good at being able to do that. And like you said, the visuals are, I think the more weird the visuals are, the more lasting they are in your head. Like we said, we don't remember that much from the miniseries. It might be because of the amount of time, but I don't think there were that many really outlandish visuals. I mean, just in that one scene where they were doing the slide projector,
yeah,
the rapid succession of those things, it's like I want to get the video or the DVD, or the Blu-ray, so I can pause every single frame, because I want to see every single one of those things. It just happens so fast, and it's just
Well, and it goes with what I think David was the one mentioned it earlier. The performance of the kids in this as well helps sell the creepiness of this so well. I mean, the group of kids that they got to portray this, their performances are phenomenal. I mean, normally, especially in horror films, no less, kid performances, no offense to kid actors out there, are a bit lacking a lot of times, either in delivery of dialogue or whatnot. But in this one, holy crap, they sell the fear. Go ahead.
Not that I'm trying to interrupt or anything.
No, go ahead.
Would you say that the hype of Stranger Things hyped this film up?
I would say it influenced it and probably got more people into the theater to see it.
Okay.
And acceptable, and more people in the theater to see it and accept bad things happening to kids. Paul, what about you? Would you say that Stranger Things may have helped with all the crazy stuff that happened in here, influence or at least help get the audience? Because the way films are made versus a TV a show, this was already in filming. But do you think it may have had some influence with acceptability of what's going on in this big screen feature?
I think it would have, just from the standpoint of as they watched it, they wouldn't have felt so disconnected. They would be used to it, and then I think then they would have told their friends about it, how great it was, rather than, oh, it was so jarring that I don't recommend it. And so in that aspect, but I don't think it got them to go there. I think just the name Stephen King's It is all it took to get them to go in there. So, but I think the influence of Stranger Things probably helped to get people more comfortable with the whole idea. And can I steal an extra moment?
Sure.
There was a newscast or one of those late night talk show things where the actor that plays Pennywise was talking about the kids, and he said that they were extremely professional actors. Like, he was surprised because he didn't know how they were going to react, because they didn't show him to them. Like, they wanted the reaction to be very genuine.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he had his first scene with Jack, the Eddie character,
right.
he mentions that because he did all this scary stuff, and he thought that Jack would be like extremely traumatized by the performance. But then right after they called cut, he says that Jack was basically like, I love where you're taking the character. I love where you're taking the character. And it was like, oh my God. Like the kids were so professional. Like, they knew their craft. They loved doing this. And that, I think, really, like you said, really made their performance that much better,
Yeah, I really think it did. And Dawn, how about you? Influence of Stranger Things, you think that made it more acceptable for the audience?
Sure. I've never seen Stranger Things.
Oh,
I really
okay.
don't have any plans to.
But it takes place in the 80s, and it's a group of kids who have really creepy shit happen to them.
Yeah, I'm aware that Finn Wolfhard, it plays in both as well, which I actually think, now that you've been talking about it, I had wondered why they had not. It seemed to me like they underdeveloped the Richie character, and now I wonder if just that because it was Finn Wolfhard, the kid from, or Finn Wolfhard, the kid from Stranger Things, they didn't need to, just because that recognition was already there.
It may have been, yeah. Richie's character really is he's the perverted friend who, well, not perverted, but I mean, he's just the kid who you can tell kind of overcompensates with a little more exaggerated personality, but you really don't
get any background.
Huh? You don't really get a background for him or fears really from him, do you? I mean, he says he sees him, but do we actually get a scene with him in Pennywise?
Not that I recall.
I don't think so either. I remember watching it now. So his character is,
oh yeah, you do. When they're in that then they were in that weird house, he's afraid of clowns.
Oh, that's right. We do get the clown scene, because that's where they sneak in a reference to the original It with an image of Pennywise from the miniseries.
I think in the book he was afraid of the Paul Bunyan statue in the park, which they only briefly showed. Yeah, it comes to life. Yeah, it comes to life and chases him, I think.
What? Paul, what do you think about the way they changed the use of Beep Beep Richie?
Oh, I loved it in the first one, and it was just like, that was kind of his catchphrase. I don't know.
That was everybody's catchphrase to say, "Shut up, Richie."
Yeah, exactly.
And then they changed it in this one.
Yeah.
I was kind of disappointed with that.
You were expecting it too, weren't you?
I was expecting it. I mean, there were so many things I was expecting, and that's That's why even though the visuals of this film and the acting involved in the kids, which was phenomenal, I cannot deny that that the kids outshine the clown to me. But I mean, there were certain things like that beep beep I was expecting. Maybe because I didn't really see anything wrong with the miniseries.
Oh, it was a great miniseries.
I don't think it's necessarily that it was anything wrong. I think they were just,
in all honesty, make a movie, not a TV series.
Right. They were trying to make a movie, and anything with King's books, I always think if you really want to try to be more accurate to the book, you need it as a miniseries, because his books are usually fairly dense. So to try to fit them in a 2.5 hour film, which I still thought they did well. And yes, folks, spoiler room, you don't get the surprise. It's actually one of the funnier surprises of all at the end of this film, which I'll mention in a minute. But I always think King's works usually work a little better as miniseries, except maybe for the Langoliers.
Ouch.
But in here, I think they give you enough feel that it's a King book. And again, I'm not as familiar with the subject matter, but even though they made changes, it felt like a Stephen King story, at least. This one especially felt like it, and everybody does well in it. And I could see where some of the changes, though, might turn some people off. It's that whole, as I'm deeming it today, copyright spoiler room, the Last Jedi syndrome, where you have expectations, and when they're ruined, you hate the movie. No, just kidding. But sorry,
I think that's been the way with all Star Wars movies for a while.
For a while, yeah, I think it has been for Star Wars movies. But I went into it not knowing much about the source material, and I dug it, and I know people who didn't, because a lot of people said there wasn't enough scary moments in this film, which I'm not sure on, because I thought they didn't let up pretty much with it.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's their definition of scared, though.
True. Everybody has a different...
There are a lot of people who are desensitized to horror when you've seen a lot of scary moments. Well, and over time, you're looking like me. I'm always looking for that scare that'll happen throughout the entire movie that will not make me want to watch that movie again. Because it's just that scary, and I have nightmares about it, But I have not personally found a film that after a year of going back, I'll go back to every film that I've watched again, just to see, if there's a scare moment. And yeah, there are jump scares, and there were jump scares in this film. But I have to agree with some of the other people that probably upset. I didn't really find the film scary. It didn't really have a jump scare, but it did have like the moments with like I think they touched upon with the the girl's father, and how erotic they seem to make her relationship with her father be. You know what I mean? Kind of an incestual thing going on.
Well, yeah, they went to that dark place with it, and yeah, I know, I get what you're saying. That again, I think it goes with Paul that this has got more dread than actual maybe scares. What you might categorize as scares.
That might be dread,
and I think also too it might be too, as some people would say, on the nose with the horror, because you can kind of, if you watch a lot of horror, as we mentioned here too, it kind of has more of that 80s slasher vibe. It has kind of those standard beats, but then again, I didn't read the book, but the impression I've gotten from a lot of people who've talked about it is you look at when the book was originally written, and it had some of those beats in it as well, from my understanding. It's just Stephen King, so it might have been buried in there a bit more. One character who I thought they handled interestingly was the Mike character with Mike
Hamlin, yeah. Mike Hamlin, yeah.
Now, Paul, you're familiar with the book as well. How accurate was his character to the book at all?
I didn't feel that he was, because in the book he was the guy that brings them back, and he was the guy that had to basically remember for them. And
But that happens in the second half.
I know it does.
Not part of this movie yet.
It's not part of this movie. So, but in this film, it felt
way to
like
spoil it, Paul. Way to spoil it. Oh wait, never mind.
But I mean, in this film, it felt like he wasn't very important. Like in the first beginning part of it, you don't really have. He doesn't even have dialogue. He just kind of is there, and you're following him along, and I just felt like, oh my god, this isn't the right character, and it's probably because I'm so used to feeling the story out of order, you know. So yeah, I didn't really think they did a good job in terms of source material. As for the movie itself, he was a really interesting character. You know,
he has growth sooner in this.
Yeah,
in the movie than I was used to, because his character grows. He's like, screw this, and then he goes back, because we first see him. He doesn't want to slaughter the lambs with his father or his grandfather, and you know, it's a family business. We're talking agricultural here, and also where they live. It's not easy for them to live there in redneck dairy.
It kind of follows that theme too throughout this things where the kids don't want to become their parents, because we see how bad the parents are. And then on the top of the thing that the curse involved is, once they do become adults like their parents, they forget the stuff that made them kids, you know. Right. And so yeah, it's just that continuation. Every single character seems to have a little bit of that, and so yeah, you bringing it up just made me realize that. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, but I liked how the Mike character, but Don, wouldn't you say too, his character has some growth more so than some of the other kids in here, and rather quickly?
Yes, and part of that is how badly he's victimized as well.
Right.
Because I mean, his character is the way they handled it in this film is the one character that I'm like, okay, I'm not sure. I think I could be wrong, but if you're talking Maine, they're treating him more as if it's the 50s rather than the 2017.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. I don't have that teenage black.
Oh, hold on. There's a really high-pitched sound coming from somewhere. Okay, it's going away. Wait. Okay. It's
but he has to overcome a whole lot more because he's a minority.
Right.
A young minority in a town that just hates everybody.
Yeah. The town does hate everybody, but you know, it also makes
he's homeschooled, so he doesn't even have the benefit of being bullied at school.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he's homeschooled. They call him homeschool, in fact. And although, you know, it makes me wonder though how he is treated. I'm wondering, because we only really see how he is truly treated by the bullies, who are definition Henry and his buddies are definition rednecks. So I don't know if that's the whole town or not.
It certainly seems to be, considering Henry's dad is the town sheriff.
Oh, is he? I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, Henry's dad. Yes. Yeah, you're right. Henry's dad. Yeah. But who knows? Maybe they're that family. I don't know. But you're right. No, it is implied that the whole town kind of treats well, because the grandfather said as well that if you don't, it was like if he doesn't learn the farming trade really quick and pick up where, you know, the business where his dad was, people are going to be deciding where he goes for him. In that bit of dialogue, I kind of love that bit of dialogue there, because you're just like, oh crap, you know, where they live. But we've already established Derry is a screwed up town anyway. which we find out through Ben, who does his history lessons, and we find out all kinds of history with him, and that history helps lead them to confront Pennywise. And we'll wrap it up here tonight, but I just want to go to the final scene where we get to see Pennywise's lair, and we get the final confrontation with Pennywise. Dawn, how'd you think how this played out?
As Paul mentioned, there were some differences between how it played out in the book versus the TV show versus this.
Mhm.
I actually liked how they handled this in this whole scene. It was expected. There was the whole sequence where Beverly wasn't afraid of Pennywise, so he had to show her the deadlights, and that was what actually drew her in and allowed him to feed on her. And that was handled minimally, and I'm hoping they touch more on it in the second one. But
oh, the deadlights, that you mean when he opens up his face basically and she's looking down his gullet and there's lights?
And there's those lights, those are the deadlights, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a whole big thing, and I'm hoping they get more into that in the second movie, in the sequel. The second half of the book.
Right. Which we'll jump real quick. Yeah, at the end of this movie, they throw it up, and you're like, wait, they're showing the credit again, and then it says chapter 1, and the audience I was in was like, oh, it was great. It was the simplest thing, and it was such a great effect because people were like, oh, so I knew the audience. It had some of the audience into the film.
Yeah.
But back to this third act, yeah. So those are deadlights, which is something else I want to talk about real quick. But I want to get David. What did you feel about this final confrontation act? How did you feel how this played out?
I actually thought that after seeing most of what Pennywise could do, I actually thought that they pulled this ending scene off rather well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. From the circus that I was seeing,
right?
But because I actually really like the history of Pennywise that they portrayed in the film, because you don't. I'm not sure if I remember if they connected some kind of a factory explosion or something to that effect that happened in Derry to Pennywise the dancing clown, because I think that they went down that road, that there were photos of this factory that the people used to work at, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Yes, there was a bunch of children that were killed.
Yeah, and I liked how they went into that history and explained a little bit more. I'm not sure if they went into that in the mini series. I don't remember, but
probably not. It was too dark.
Yeah,
television.
But I liked how they explained a little bit more of a backstory about how the possibility, and you see that a little bit more at this ending scene where you see his domain, his whatever cart that apparently was part of his dancing clown circus. Cirque du Soleil type thing going on, and you see all these bodies up in the air. It's like they're being flatlined, and I guess it's different because you don't really see in the mini series. It was the deadlights, and even though you're saying deadlights, it's not exactly deadlights to me because it wasn't said. It wasn't said, and it wasn't described. So to me, it was more of a whatever the director was trying to create.
Sure.
Instead of the normal direction of the let's let's bring them into the deadlights. Let's just bring them into my a hole of a face.
Right. And it puts you in a trance of some sort. You're not quite sure why with that. And Paul, how about you?
I loved what they did when I was experiencing the story the first time. I didn't think of floating in the sense that they did in the film.
Mhm.
I just assumed, okay, sewer, they're just kind of floating in water. To have them actually be floating, it made it seem more powerful. It was like they are floating, and it was an impressive sight. It was like, and it was something too, because you expect to, like, oh, I know everything about this story going into it, and it was like, wow, that was something different. Good on you guys. And that's how I felt by that scene. So they just did it really well. And also too, it felt like even if they didn't have that chapter 1 and chapter 2 coming, that would have been just a good enough ending for me. I was satisfied by that story and how it ended.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great that they have a second one. I'm so excited about it because we can see the next part of the tale, and it's like, what are the effects of this movie to the kids as they're grown up? And I hope they re-release this film before the second one comes out so that we can all watch it.
Well, of course they will, because cha-ching. There's money in it. Star Wars has proven that.
It's penny wise. Yes.
It's penny wise, penny earned, right? Final thing I want to talk about. You mentioned the deadlights. And one thing in me, and I watched it again, it was even more evident. We mentioned it in the beginning. We got to see kind of the glowing lights of Pennywise's eyes, kind of unnatural. And then they kind of go cross when he takes a bite out of Georgie. But Dawn, did you notice what they did with the eyes of the kids every time they just started getting nightmares?
I didn't.
Paul, did you?
I didn't.
David, did you?
No, I did not.
Okay, if you watch the film again, if you find yourself watching again, check out the eyes. And I don't know if it's just the way they shot the film, but I don't think it was, because it was happening enough times to where it had to be something that they were working in that was subtle. If you look at the eyes of all the kids
when they're having their dreams,
especially when they're having their dreams, it pretty much whenever Pennywise is coming, and I checked it, and it's not quite happening when it's done. When it's not, but when Pennywise is there and they're like going to the house, or they walk into the area where it's going to be dark, if you look in their eyes, there's a little light, like a light reflection.
Huh.
But it's like there's a light in their eyes slightly. It's dim, almost like a star. This sounds kind of cheesy, but if you look at a star in the sky, and you look at their eyes, it's bright, but their eyes, even when it's dark and you can barely see anything, their eyes have a bit of a spark in them. And it's like a reflection. And it happens every time they get put into, or Pennywise is coming.
That's cool.
And it's something I noticed the first time, and I'm like, well, maybe it's just the way they shot it. But I watched the second time, like, I'm thinking it might be deliberate. So I don't know, folks. If you think it's deliberate, or take a look, if you watch it again, let me know.
Sweet.
The email's there in the spoiler room description, or you can email us from specialmarkproductions.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've noticed this with the eyes.
And speaking of Pennywise's eye, the fact that the one eye can, like a lazy eye, go to the one side, that is not an effect. He actually can do that.
Oh,
yeah, I read that. That's awesome.
Isn't that amazing? To be able to find a character that you could do something like that must be fun.
Don, quick question. The house that they use, was that in the book as well? Do you remember?
The well house? Yes, it was.
Okay. The well house was the one,
because the well house was not in the miniseries.
Yep.
No, they pulled different sources
It's been a while
the
since
book to use in the movie.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
It's been a while.
Yeah, they made a very, very definite effort to the new series.
Okay.
Right. They were trying to at least convey more that, hey, no, this is more off of the book than off of the miniseries, though they did grab some elements there as well. And yeah, I think we've talked about a lot with this film. There's a lot more to talk about, but I think we're going to wrap it up tonight, folks. And so it was one that a lot of people thought, and I even thought, and I didn't mind though, that it was more of and this will be the final question I'll ask of everyone tonight, that this is more of a maybe along the lines of a Goonies scary coming of age story more so than straight up horror movie. So what do you think, Paul? Do you think this is more of a straight up horror movie, or do you think this is more kind of along the coming of age scariness type thing with a little more blood, of like a Goonies type story?
I can see that, but to me, I grew up reading Stephen King, and so this to me is horror. So yeah, this to me is a straight up horror film. Sure. But I can see your point. It really does you make a good point with the other one. So
David, what about you? I know you didn't care about Pennywise and some other things with the element, but if you had to choose with this film, would you say it leans more towards like a Goonies coming of age with more blood, or?
It's interesting that you asked that, because if you are a Stephen King fan that's out there, if you're listening, folks, is that there is a book that was written by some editors called The Stephen King Universe. And supposedly they connected each of the worlds of Stephen King's books to each other in some way, shape, or form. And it's an interesting theory, because if you read it, it makes sense. Okay, that there was a universe within in his multi-universe, and to me, this is kind of an adventurous Goonie horror story to me. But it's not your straight up horror,
right?
Because it has a supernatural element, you know, in a sense.
Sure. Yep.
I'm not sure if you could call it entirely evil yet.
There's a lot of dark stuff that happens though. But yeah, the shared universe, I mean, I believe that's what they were trying to, he was kind of implied with the Dark Tower series, was that it was
almost every single book that he's ever written is tied to the Dark Tower.
It is. Okay.
A character, a reference, almost every single book that he has ever written is tied to the Dark Tower.
That's what
even himself is in the Dark Tower series.
Wow.
And he's been very public about this.
Ah, okay. Yeah, because they tried to do that in that movie. That
it's still called the Dark Tower. Come on.
Which the Dark Tower is actually written about the poem to Childe Roland, The Dark Tower Came, which was by Robert Browning.
Oh, was not aware of that. I just know the movie was lackluster, and they did fit in there the Pennywise reference with
in college. Stephen King read that poem, and it was about a knight of like the Middle Ages, and he just started writing the Dark Tower in college. So
that doesn't surprise me, because his imagination is a scary, wonderful place that I'm glad he visits. Like he shares with everyone quite often. And yeah, the movie tried to work that into it a bit too. There's a Pennywise roller coaster that's all mangled and post-apocalyptic in the Dark Tower movie. Or as I like to call it, the biggest fan film ever made. So sorry. I can't say because I'm not familiar with source material, but I'll leave it at that. But Don, would you say this is more coming of age, scary Goonies, or more along the lines of horror?
Coming of age horror. More like, Stand By Me.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Stand By Me.
Not Goonies.
Not Goonies. Nice. Okay. Sure. Then there you go. There's another Stephen King link.
That's coming of age.
Richard Bachman. That's coming of age. Yes. Well said. I forgot about Stand By Me for a minute. This is a great movie.
And I can't wait for trivia so you and I can debate the Dark Tower.
Ooh. Well, to go, since it is Stephen King related, we'll discuss it real quick. I just will go on record saying I'm not familiar enough with the source material. I just took it as a movie by itself, and sitting down with a movie by itself, I was like, wow, okay. I was not quite impressed, especially considering they put all the action scenes in the movie trailer. So, there were elements that I liked about it, and yes, we can debate with it. But again, I'll be at a disadvantage because I will only have my movie knowledge, and while Dawn has.
But it's even beyond the source material stuff. It was not intended to be based on the source material, but inspired by. It was supposed to be a completely alternate reality from the source material. So it was intended to be taken all on its own. The big mistake was making it not rated R.
Well, I believe I mentioned in my review too for that one that it felt like it was leaning towards R a bit, like it really wanted to be.
It needed to be.
Because what we got for me, I was like, okay, and some of the dialogue from McConaughey just was, wow, okay, dude.
Sounded just like the Walking Dude.
like who?
The Walking Dude.
Okay, I'm not sure who.
For the Dark Tower, when I was thinking about when it was coming out, I could have seen Russell Crowe in the role of
the Man in Black.
No, not the Man in Black. I could have seen Ian McKellen as the Man in Black.
Oh yeah.
But I could see Russell Crowe as Roland Deschain.
Well, I'll watch Idris Elba in anything. So, and he's the reason why I watched that film anyway. So. And I got my Idris Elba fix with the film, so there is that. So, so we will wrap it up tonight here with it, 2017. I hope we've given you some insight, and I'm sure many of you out there hated it and loved it. Wow, that's hard to say, or some are in between, but that's always a great thing about films. Everyone sees something different. So we're going to wrap it up tonight where you can find these fine folks at. It is the shill moment of the show. So you can find out where these lovely people are when they are not here. So Dawn, go ahead.
I am in the audience.net.
Fantastic. And David?
I run Movies Galore of Milwaukee, which is a blog by that name. And then I also host Inside Movies Galore, which you can find us on YouTube and Facebook page.
Awesome. And go, Paul, go.
Oh, I want everybody to go to newhorrorfest.com. That's newhorrorfest.com to find out about the Northeast Wisconsin Horror Film Festival. Hey!
Nice. And yes, check out all these wonderful folks' material. I appreciate them taking their time to discuss this film. And again, I understand how it is nowadays where people either love or hate a film, but there is an in-between as well. So give every movie a try. You'll never know what you might find. So with that, I will say, let's say goodnight to it. So say goodnight, it.
Good night, Ed.
Good night, Ed.
And that'll be the end of
Richie. Beep, beep, Richie.
And that'll be the
Richie.
that'll be the end of it.